Drinking Kool-Aid to start your day? Really?
It's so good.
What kind?
Red. Pour a little something for yourself. It's watered down. It's not too bad.
You really drinking
Ice
Kool-Aid?
cold. It's ice cold. Yeah.
You are drinking Kool-Aid.
Yeah. It's awesome.
You're drinking 64 ounce.
Two Bears, One Cave is one of the most popular comedy podcasts on YouTube, thanks in large part to clips like the one you just watched. That clip alone is responsible for over 10 million views over the several channels under the YMH Studios umbrella. For fans of Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer, that's the kind of entertainment that kept us tuning in, setting the stage for some of the funniest clips that either of them has on the internet. The show started back in 2019 and was instantly a success, as Tom and Bert were already fairly famous comedians. The format allows them both to play to their strengths. Bert could go on wild tangents about partying, while Tom could play the level-headed every guy, while also making fun of Bert's outlandish stories.
It's noticeable now, right, that he's gaining weight.
Yeah.
Everyone can see it now, right?
Right.
Like Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor, or Chris Farley and David Spade, the two are a complementary pair, the perfect yin to the other's yang. At some points over the past 4 years, they were one of the top comedy podcasts on YouTube, averaging over 20,000 subscribers and more than 20 million views per month. The podcast also helps to promote their worldwide comedy tours. But over the recent months, it's clear that the show is suffering and is no longer what it once was. For example, Tom no longer seems as happy as he once was, especially towards his fan base, calling them out for being pores. Bert has always been a little out of touch. It's actually one of his best qualities. But over the last year, his partying has become even more of an issue, stirring up controversy with some of his closest friends in comedy.
So I ran over there in the car. I have the text, because in the story he told, I kept them waiting, which is not true.
Forever.
That's exactly wrong. Yeah. And this I have receipts. I have text.
This is everything. What you're saying right now is so specific to a Bert version of a story.
It's an insight into Bert's mind. He just made up his own story about me.
Interesting.
And that's how it...
Because of how busy both of them have become, they stopped putting as much effort into their podcast, and it's starting to show, as they've been putting out podcasts weeks to even months in advance. Tom's move to Austin didn't help things either, as he took the entire YMH studios to Austin with him, which meant Bert would have to fly into Austin for every podcast. This caused them to do what they initially said they would never do: have guest bears. This really brought down the quality of the show as they grew their fan base with the format of solely Tom and Bert. Even some of their most recent guests thought that when they were coming on the show that they would be interviewed by both Bert and Tom. This could have been a misunderstanding, and hopefully it was, because if it was a bait and switch, then that's a really lowball thing to do to a guest who thinks they are going to sit down with Tom Segura.
He's not going to be here?
No, he's not.
I thought Two Bears was you and him.
I know. Well, you're a guest bear.
Oh, I'll be a guest bear.
Yeah, you're a guest bear.
Okay.
So
Got
you're
it.
filling in for Tom. Thank God.
This is why podcasts like Matt and Shane's have had so much success. They created a format and stuck to it. Only rarely has one of them hosted the show with a guest, and that was due to extraneous circumstances. Even if it does hurt the podcast, you can't really hold it against Bert and Tom. They are both two of the biggest comics in America, and finding time each week to do a Two Bears is harder than it looks to us fans. But it still takes away from the quality of the show, as it appears more and more like a job to them, rather than something they want to be doing. Because in all reality, neither of them have to do the podcast. They are both two of the biggest comedians in America in terms of ticket sales, despite what genuine comedy fans think about their material. So while the show is mainly to market themselves, it is still a very big cash cow, which makes it seem even more like a job to them. In the show's early days, it was obvious that Bert and Tom were really good friends. They even called each other best friends and ended each podcast by saying,
Love you.
I love you too.
but recently it seems like they don't even hang out outside of work, and the fans are taking notice that they are more business partners than friends.
I called Tom yesterday and was like, and I can unload on him and he can unload on me. Like, he was going through something the other day and he can unload on me. And it's like, and we talk about our wives and like, but if we didn't have a podcast together, I don't know, I don't know how our connection, or it would be.
For the true fans of Two Bears, One Cave, this is a problem, because one of the main reasons fans of these kind of podcasts tune in is because they like the idea that they are listening to people that are actually friends. Take that away and you might as well listen to The View, because without the camaraderie, it's just content to make ad revenue. Fans are not stupid. They can see through the bull. That's why Matt and Shane have the top podcast on Patreon. That's why Bad Friends is successful, garnering over 1 million subscribers in just 3 years of production. At one point, this was a trajectory that Two Bears, One Cave was on, but now it's like the friendship is dwindling and it's starting to hurt their numbers, and it seems like it all started when Tom followed Joe Rogan to Austin. After all, Two Bears, One Cave is under the umbrella of YMH Studios. I'm sure Bert is compensated very well, but that doesn't take away from the strain of having to travel to Austin every week just to do an hour-long podcast. Not to mention that the majority of the most watched clips on YMH Studios are clips of Two Bears, One Cave. If the podcast had a channel of its own, I'm certain that it would have over 1 million subscribers. It's also very interesting and somewhat one-sided that Bert has always been the one that gets thrown under the bus. Tom makes fun of him to his face, which is what good friends do, but lately Bert has become the butt of Tom's jokes when Bert is not there, openly discussing all of Bert's faults, from his drinking to the stories that may or may not be true. But when it comes to Tom, it seems like he's off limits.
Every time we talk about like a watch or a car, I'll get a bunch of messages from losers that try to tell me that I'm making them feel bad about their situation. You're in control of your own situation and your own feelings. So don't put it on me that you feel bad.
Why does it upset you so much to live off the land?
Hate camping?
Is it because it's like poor people things? Is it because it's poor?
No, I'm not like, there's things that people like and don't
You
like.
can see that his wife tried to call him out for his rationale, but he just continues on and doesn't even acknowledge it. This is because it was around the same time that he was receiving kickback for his recent mental breakdown on X over a flight attendant who was just doing her job. Apparently, she made him check his bag, like everyone has to do when the plane is overloaded. So he decided to call her a derogatory term while also insulting all the poors, who commented, letting him know that he was out of line. In the end, he gave a somewhat apology, if you can even consider this an apology, as he still referred to the flight attendant as a child. I know what you're thinking. This is just a rich guy bit, and Tom doesn't really hate poors. I get that, but if it really was a bit, he would just come out and say it, because it's not worth losing fans over, which he is. While it may have started as a bit, you can tell by the tone of his voice that he's not completely joking. After fans started criticizing Tom for talking about expensive items like cars and watches, Bert stepped in to let fans know that Tom himself was a poor at one time, and that he struggled making it to where he is today. But if you look into Tom's background, his dad was a top executive for a very big corporation, so the narrative of him growing up poor isn't exactly what it would seem. I think this is a big reason for the show starting to take a dive. Fans could deal with Bert making up stories and partying all the time, while Tom played the level-headed pragmatist. But now Tom is turning on the people that made Two Bears, One Cave what it is today. Also, fans tune into Two Bears, One Cave because of the friendship between Tom and Bert. When it's just Bert and a guest, the views are down significantly, and the thumbs down are way up. Even when Tom is doing the podcast solo, the numbers are way down. Also, because of them pre-recording several episodes at a time, it's doubtful that the conversation will be as interesting because they are not able to talk about current events or respond to comments about situations like the Thai food pizza controversy. It's not that banking episodes is the worst thing you can do, but they are obviously doing it as a business move, which is leaking into their demeanor, and fans can tell. It seems like they are taking on a bit more than they can actually handle, as they have multiple shows under the YMH umbrella. Not to mention that they each have their own channels respectively. Along with Bert's channel, he also has a cooking show, while also spending a huge chunk of time on his movie, both focusing on the quantity of their content instead of the quality.
He's going back on tour. I know this.
Yeah.
And he's like, so he's been sober.
Yep.
And probably eating better, or actually, so eating keto, I should say. So that's what he's eating. But he's going to go back on tour. So he's going to be out of ketosis. He's going to be drinking again.
After he broke his entire body trying to dunk a basketball, Tom has been on a fit kick, which doesn't really align with Bert's lifestyle, but it feels like he is holding that above Bert's head, as he always criticizes Bert for his lifestyle choices. One clear example of how Two Bears, One Cave is failing is when they had Joe Rogan on as a guest. Other channels that had Joe on racked up tens of millions of views, but when he was on Two Bears with Tom, it only garnered a fraction of the views. With Bert and Tom constantly on the road touring, it doesn't appear that the show will improve anytime soon. After all, the show started under the guise that it would only be Tom and Bert and there wouldn't be any guests unless they were both there. But now, over 1/3 of the podcast have guests. This wouldn't be a problem if the show seemed to have some sort of format, like one episode with Tom and Bert, then an episode with Tom and a guest, then an episode with Bert and a guest, and then repeat. Instead, some months have had 3 straight Bert and a guest, which fans have no interest in tuning into. Again, choosing quantity over quality, which rarely works for an extended period of time. This would be like Shane missing 3 secret podcasts in a row and just having Matt talk with a guest. If they did that, then their podcast would start to fall off as well. But it doesn't seem to matter to Bert and Tom.
It's not my responsibility to control how you feel.
I don't like horror movies. I don't watch them. I don't watch them and then complain to Rodrigo Ramirez or whatever the guy's name is.
Robert Rodriguez?
Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah.
And then go, hey man, your movie bothered me.
Yeah.
You can't be making those movies.
No, of course
No,
not.
people like it. There are people that here, I love talking about watches. I really do. Because
Sure.
I just got into watches. I don't have a ton of watches, but I like when people talk about them.
While this is by no means the end of Two Bears, One Cave, it definitely signifies a turning point in the show as they have 2 options. Continue to produce quantity over quality and watch your numbers slowly dissipate, or you can get back to the basics and make the show what it once was. Sadly, it appears that they will continue to choose quantity as both of them have several sources of income outside of the podcast. When it comes down to it, the show is still a massive success and it's not going anywhere, but it could be on the level of Joe Rogan if they dedicated their time solely to the podcast. But again, both of them have way too much going on and the podcast is probably their 4th or 5th source of income. So dedicating more time to making the podcast great would only hamper their overall careers. Plus, Bert would have to move to Austin and both of them would have to alter their entire schedule just to accommodate something they have always considered a fun side gig. Let me know what you think in the comments below.
Give me that